I started out by looking online for different images of calico cats, but didn't really find anything that I liked. So then I turned to my text messages and found some past photos of Chloe and Zoe and tried to look at their markings. And I had a conversation with AI actually, and had it analyze photos and try to come up with images. And this is what AI came up with. They weren't the greatest images, but they were okay. So that was a good starting point. And I put all those images into Adobe Illustrator and tried to come up with the image in the middle that you see there circled in red, and matched up and edited the markings myself so that they looked more like the actual cats. Then I used Adobe Illustrator to separate them into different layers. The black is the walnut color, and I used cherry wood for the orange part of the cats, and then the eyes and ears and nose were hickory. So I won't go into too much detail of this, but for each of the inlays you need a pocket and a plug. And the pocket is cut at a 15-degree angle, and so is the plug, in a mirror image to fit inside. And there's a little thin space at the bottom for glue, and then there's some clearance at the top so that I can cut it off or plane it off using a tool. I used two different bits. The one on the left is an 1/8 of an inch end mill, has a flat top, and the one on the right comes to a tip, and it's only 15 degrees, and the tip is only 0.2 of a millimeter. Here's my first inlaid cutting board. That's a design that's out of maple cut into a walnut board. So I designed the board too with the handle. It's pretty small, it's only 6 inches wide. The wood has this pretty tiger striping to it, flame to it. Then I turned to the software that controls the CNC machine, and you can actually do some design in here, but I designed this in Adobe Illustrator and then brought the image into this file. From the two-dimensional image, you use the software to create the three-dimensional tool path that actually carves into the wood. For each of the inlays, you use the two different bits, one to remove the mass amount of material in the middle, and the other one to carve the 15-degree angle where the two pieces actually fit together. To the lumberyard, bought the different species of wood, and then started planing them all flat using a planer, and then took them into the machine and started running the programs one inlay at a time. So the first inlay was walnut into beech. Here's the clearance tool that cuts the bulk of the material out of the middle of the inlay. Here's the V-bit that carves that 15-degree angle into the edges. You have to take each pass really slowly. Part of the programming of this is knowing what species of wood you're using so you don't move too quickly, and then also the speed that the bit rotates. That really matters so you don't get burning or breaking of any bits. Here's the first piece of walnut that is going to create all of the edges of the two cats and will plug into the pocket that I was just carving. Once that's all glued up, I cut the next pocket for the maple to go into the walnut, and that's going to create the white parts of the cat. And I was really nervous at this part because it was cutting super thin pieces in the leg, and I was amazed that it didn't break. This is the maple plug that's going to plug into the walnut. And then you cut it all out and fit the pieces together. I had to make several jigs for this project. This one is a jig to cut one straight edge in a board because I don't have a jointer. And then I used that straight edge to make all of the repeated cuts to create the frame. Okay, this is a jig I made for cutting 90-degree mitered corners for picture frames. It's got a 90-degree aluminum square that I cut down the middle and kept with the original dimensions so I can still use the marks on here to measure. So this is perfectly 90 degrees. It took a bit of work to get that and bolt it down. It's got a movable stop on this side so that when I cut that first angle, I can rotate it over and it sits against this piece and I can measure out exactly how far I want that to be and lock it down. And it moves through the blade. It only needs to go a certain distance because it's just cutting that width of the picture frame. It doesn't need to go all the way through. And then on the back side of this, I used white, this is leftover from a cutting board, I think. And I cut it to the exact size of these tracks so that it fits right inside the table saw and slides without moving. There's no side-to-side movement at all. It's just forward and back. I used the router to cut chamfers into the edges of the picture frame. While I was waiting for the glue to dry, Kobe was hanging out with me in the garage. Here's another jig that I made to cut splines into the corners of the frame. It adds some strength and stability to the frame, but also adds a nice detail with the contrast between the maple and the walnut wood. I went back to Adobe Illustrator, designed some legs for the stand, used the router to round over the edges, sanded it all up, and then used some hinges to attach them together. And the project was essentially complete. Happy 80th birthday, Mom. I hope you like it.